Good morning or good evening to Hong Kong and UK audience. Welcome to the webinar co-organized by the UK's Department for International Trade and Invest Hong Kong. We are going to talk about the Hong Kong's Arts and Creative Hub opportunities ahead today. Special welcome to the delegates of Arts Council England and Cultural Diary. I hope this webinar also serves as a follow-up for the planned mission back in February. This webinar will be recorded. By way of introduction, I'm Chloe Law, Head of Creative Industries at DIT Hong Kong and Macau. I look after subsectors including arts and culture, design, film, game, experience economy, and more. The Department for International Trade specializes on promoting UK trade across the world, as well as attracting investment back into the UK. DIT has regional offices across the UK, and we work with international trade advisors of different regions to support trade missions and business activities in Hong Kong. At Post, we are constantly in conversation with local stakeholders to discover opportunities for UK companies to sell their goods and services. If you are thinking of exporting to Hong Kong, we are ready to support you throughout your journey. For local Hong Kong companies, if you're looking at getting UK goods and services, we are always more than happy to make the connections. Speak with us, we are here to help. Today, I'm joined by my counterpart at the Hong Kong government, Ms. Doris Fong, Head of Creative Industries of Invest Hong Kong. Invest Hong Kong is responsible for attracting and facilitating foreign direct investment into Hong Kong. Doris oversees a wide spectrum of creative industries, helping creative enterprises in setting up or expanding their operations here. She will be giving an overview of the creative industries landscape in Hong Kong and opportunities ahead. Following Doris's presentation, Ms. Alison Friedman, Artistic Director, Performing Arts of West Kowloon Cultural District Authority, will be sharing the development and opportunities at West Kowloon Cultural District. Alison realizes the authority's vision to be a regional and global leader in performing arts with conceptualized, curated, and implemented programs. Next, we have Mr. Sam Bumpers joining us from the UK. Hello, Sam. He will be sharing on the foundation of creativity, Taste the Future, Hong Kong and Your Radical Palette. Sam is the co-founder of Bumpers & Pa, a creative studio recognized as a leading expert on polysensory experience design. They just launched their first overseas office in Hong Kong last month. After the presentations, Mr. Andrew Davis, Head of Investment Promotion at Invest Hong Kong's London office, will be moderating a panel discussion followed by a Q&A session. Hello there, Andrew.
Good morning.
Throughout the presentations, please feel free to raise questions using the chat function, and we will try to address as many as possible. Without further ado, let's welcome our first speaker, Doris.
First of all, thank you very much, Chloe. And I also want to thank DIT for co-hosting this webinar with Invest Hong Kong. And welcome everybody from Hong Kong and from overseas. We are hosting this webinar in our office, now turned studio, in the next 60 minutes with a very nice Hong Kong park as our backdrop. So hopefully the COVID situation will calm down very soon and you'll be able to visit us very soon. So let's start by looking at some of the more vibrant creative industries, developments in Hong Kong, even during the COVID period, and what the opportunities are in Asia. Okay. First of all, I would like just to give you some ideas about how creative business from overseas or local business in Hong Kong are using Hong Kong to tackle the APAC and China market. For example, many art galleries or international art business are located in Hong Kong because they want to attract a lot of high net worth individuals to build connections with artists and other museums institutions. For architecture, you see Hong Kong, apart from having very nice architecture behind us, actually Hong Kong is a very strategic location and very good operational hub for many international architecture companies to oversee their regional projects, for example, in mainland China or in APAC region. For many design companies, they are based in Hong Kong. Actually, mainland China is the biggest export market. And you'll see maybe later on, Sam will also show it to you, how they use Hong Kong to leverage on these opportunities. As for the digital sectors, I think there are a lot of interesting developments during the COVID period. And in particular, like gaming, many international gaming companies are located in Hong Kong to launch and promote their new products and also to find distributors and partners. And digital marketing is also very vibrant in Hong Kong because many brands are located in Hong Kong and they want to be close to the key decision makers. We also have a very vibrant media and publishing industry because of the free flow of information and very easy access to the regional market. When I talk about Hong Kong, I want our overseas audience, maybe Hong Kong audience are already familiar with this term about the Greater Bay Area, because when we talk about the Hong Kong market, it's not just about Hong Kong, it's about the GBA region. And what do we mean by GBA? GBA is 11 cities all combined together. 9 cities from mainland China, Guangdong province, including Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and Zhuhai, and also 2 special administrative regions, including Hong Kong and Macau. And combined, we have 71 million population. So it's a big market to tackle. And our GDP is $1.6 trillion US dollars, equivalent to Australia and Spain as well. And how creative industries and why creative industries companies are located in Hong Kong to tackle the GBA region is because Hong Kong has a very international business environment. And we also are very close to the Shenzhen and Greater Bay Area, where there are a lot of well-established supply chains. And with a big consumer base of 70 million people, which are relatively and increasingly wealthy. So it becomes a very interesting market. So let's get into some details about some creative sectors that have an interesting development during this very difficult period. Hong Kong is one of the world's largest art markets after New York and London. One reason being we don't have any sales tax or any tax on import or exports of art. It becomes very convenient and very cost effective to have art business here in Hong Kong. And we also have many diversified art fairs, ranging from Art Basel and Art Central. For audience overseas, if you really want to visit Hong Kong, hopefully next year, please come in March so that you can come and visit our Art Month. But despite the fact that many art fairs are cancelled, including Art Basel and Art Central, we see an interesting movement or interesting phenomenon that the art world's transformation into a new paradigm rooted in digital. Not only Art Basel has gone online, but many art galleries are now relying on the digital channels like social media, Instagram, other online viewing room to show their artworks. And we also want to introduce an interesting art movement called Art Power, a very interesting art portal. It's a community of arts formed by art galleries and also other art institutions coming together during the COVID period. And they have many interesting online talks and online exhibitions. I would encourage you to really go and have a look at the portal. And of course, I'm not going into details about West Kowloon Cultural District because Alison will go into details about what they can offer and what is the latest development, what kind of partnership opportunities they will be having for many of our overseas clients and local clients as well. But I just want to highlight some of the continuous development in arts and culture because the Hong Kong government have invested a lot in the arts and culture. 20 billion Hong Kong dollars were put into redeveloping, renovating existing cultural facilities and building new ones. For example, the Hong Kong Museum of Art are newly renovated and it was reopened last year. And the upcoming East Kowloon Cultural Center is also a creative and cultural hub for performances and community events. All these create wonderful partnership opportunities for museum institutions and performing arts companies. Another interesting sectors in the creative industries, which we might be able to call them winners during this COVID period, are the digital entertainment sector. One being the gaming sector. I'm sure many of you are still in lockdown. In Hong Kong, I think over 90% of us are now working in the office, so we can't play games anymore. But I think in the past few months when we were in the lockdown, or now if you are still in the lockdown, you have more time at home doing or playing home entertainment after working from home. So gaming has a wonderful growth during this period, and the global gaming industry will see double-digit growth in the next few years. Esports also has double-digit growth. And for Hong Kong, even though the gaming market is relatively small, but we have a very interesting market with very sophisticated gamer and also very high spending power. And many international gaming companies, including mainland companies, come to Hong Kong to leverage on our expertise in developing monetization models, for example, cross-border sponsorships, merchandising partnership, and other partnerships in GBA. And one thing also Hong Kong is good at is we are an excellent location for fundraising. Many gaming companies came to Hong Kong to fundraise, and just a few weeks ago, NetEase, one of the biggest online gaming companies in mainland China, has successfully listed. They have the secondary listing in Hong Kong and raised $2.7 billion just a few weeks ago. So another winner, I must say, is the exploding demand for digital content, from mobile apps to free TV streaming. And we can see, for example, winners like Netflix, Disney Plus have double-digit growth. And there are downloads for Netflix in Hong Kong, also double in March as compared to January. And of course, there are a lot of free videos, which is on YouTube and TikTok. They have huge growth in downloading and in viewing. And APAC remains a very important and the largest OTT region by 2021. And we see a new demand or more demand for original content, and localization actually is very important. And therefore, Hong Kong can also be used as a base to create wonderful content. We have many talents, rich supply of talents in media, content creation, and production. And because of the free flow of information and liberal environment, therefore, many international media organizations also use Hong Kong as the regional hub. And with the development of 5G, I can't just stress how important it is for the technology development in Hong Kong. We are having 5G now, and this will also create wonderful experience, immersive experience for live entertainment in the future, or at present, starting already. Another interesting trend is in digital marketing. Even though the economy or advertising spend in the next few months or for the rest of this year may suffer some setback, but we see COVID-19 as a key driver for digital transformation for many, many companies, big and small. Even the government, we are having our first virtual festival of StarMia Festival next week. So we are trying to reach out to global audience through digital tools. And many companies have to rely on digital tools now to reach their audience and to continue engage with their customers. And therefore, we still see a stable demand and ad spend in particularly areas like search, social, video, and programmatic, and even some growth area in these areas. And APAC ad spend will rebound in 2021 with 8.1%. So Hong Kong is a very good hub to tackle all these interesting trends because we are home to many multicultural iconic brands here. And it's not that difficult to find advertisers and marketers for the region as well. Hong Kong is a regional architectural hub. Even though our city is very small, but I just want to highlight, we do have some very interesting and iconic architecture. I'm not sure whether you can see the Bank of China over there, because I can't see it on my screen at the moment. But these are only some of the examples that I have listed in the PowerPoint. And I'm sure one of them, Alison will talk about the T2 Center, which is so beautiful. And the Zaha Hadid Innovation Tower in PolyU is also a wonderful architecture icon in Hong Kong. All these points to the fact that many architectural companies from overseas, they like to use Hong Kong as a regional hub to tackle their regional projects as well. I will leave this to Sam because how international design companies can leverage on Hong Kong to tackle the design business and tap into the opportunities in the region. I'm sure Sam will share with you a lot of his strategies and his thoughts. But I just want to point out to startup entrepreneurs or creative startups, if you want to start a company in Hong Kong, we have many wonderful incubation programs that tailor your needs. For example, in Cyberport, in Science Park, in Design Center, these are government-related initiatives that fund a lot of startups. We have incubation programs with free internships, free office space to help startups to grow in Hong Kong. The Mills is also a business incubators for textile startups. They also have an incubation program in London as well. And apart from startup, of course, Hong Kong attracts a lot of international global business. According to our survey last year, over 9,000 international companies use Hong Kong as a regional hub, with 1,541 as the regional headquarters. The reason being, there are many favorable factors like simple and low tax, free and open market, excellent accessibility in the region, and many more as well, because I don't have time to go through every single one of them, but we can talk about that later on if we have time. But I also want to point out, actually, the government has also many funding schemes to help companies setting up in Hong Kong to do research and development, and also to develop the business in the region, not just in Hong Kong. These are just some of the, excuse me, some of the highlights of the funding scheme. Sorry, I must have some water first. Okay, all right, I'll continue. So some of these funding schemes are tailor-made for companies that are set up in Hong Kong to develop the overseas market. For example, the SME marketing funds will help companies to develop or to take part in trade fairs. Even virtual fairs are available to or are eligible to apply for this funding as well to develop the overseas market. And eventually, if you want to start an overseas operation in mainland China, in ASEAN and FTA markets, you can also apply for the BUD fund, which is up to 450,000 euro to do projects to develop your operation overseas. So last but not the least, Hong Kong, Invest Hong Kong's role, of course, is to help you plan, set up, launch your business, and expand your business in the region. We have 30 overseas offices, over 30 overseas offices, including one in London and other ones in Europe, North America, and throughout the world as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me, and we can also discuss some of the questions in the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doris. Thank you for giving the overview on the Hong Kong opportunities. Next, Alison, please take the stage.
All right. 大家好. 大家好. Hello, everyone. I'm Alison Friedman. I'm the Artistic Director of Performing Arts for West Kowloon Cultural District. And thank you so much for having me on today's webinar, and thank all of you for joining. As you can see just from Doris's presentation, there's tremendous opportunity in the cultural industries here in Hong Kong. And I have to say, I'm particularly heartened to be here at this time. We're reopening our theaters. And when I look around the world at my colleagues in the performing arts, globally, it's really challenging. So it's quite encouraging that Hong Kong is already at a stage where we're reopening theaters. We had performances start up already last week. So this, I think there's an opportunity for us to lead the industry globally from Hong Kong in building up performing arts industries again. So I will give a fast and furious introduction to West Kowloon Cultural District. We are one of the largest arts and cultural developments in the world right now. This image we're looking at on the screen is a bit of a bird's eye view at the westernmost tip, and the district is 40 hectares and goes all the way to Canton Road, for those of you familiar with Hong Kong. And this is an animation, if only we could build it this quickly. We're building 6 or more performing arts centers, 2 museums, massive park open space, which in a city as dense as Hong Kong, having this kind of open park space is really an oasis. And then looking at this slide, what you see in the gray buildings are also commercial development opportunities, retail, dining, entertainment. So it really is a cultural district. And it's a bit cheesy, but I like to say the mathematical equation is art plus life equals culture. So when art becomes part of your daily lifestyle, that's where culture is enriched. That's where a city's society and culture is developed because of this integration of arts, commerce, all of it becoming part of your daily activity and your habits. So here's an overview of the different facilities. Now, batch 1 are the red ones, and those are either already open or going to open in the next year. So the very first building that we opened, you can see on the far, it's the right side of what I'm looking at, the Xiqiu Center. It opened in January of 2019. That's our Center for Chinese Opera. Xiqiu is the Mandarin word for Chinese opera, and it presents all kinds of things. I'll get to that in a moment. And then on the far left of the district, all of that green open space is the art park. That's already open with restaurants, cafes, and it's one of the few parks in Hong Kong that allows dogs. So we've seen, it's a veritable dog show every weekend with all kinds of sizes and breeds of dogs, but we've even seen parakeets, we've seen cats on leashes, we've seen giant tortoise, snakes and lizards people have brought.
Wow.
Yes. So it's a very welcoming place already. And then right in the middle, you'll see a little black box theater called Free Space. This is a center for contemporary performance. And this building opened a year ago, so in June of 2019. So these 2 performing arts centers are already open and operating. And very soon on the heels, coming online is M+, the new Museum for Contemporary Visual Culture. And very soon after that will then be the Hong Kong Palace Museum. And the next batch are in blue on this screen. That includes Music Center and a number of other facilities. And then in yellow, Hong Kong Palace Museum is in yellow, and the Lyric Theater Complex, which is a big complex with 3 different theaters, 8 dance studios, and a lot of food and beverage cafes and restaurants as well. So now I'll break these down and take you through it. Now, one thing to mention, the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority is a non-governmental organization. Even though the project was set up by government, the organization is more of an NGO structure. For those of you familiar with the structure here in Hong Kong, it's like the Hospital Authority or the MTR Authority. So we're actually essentially an NGO, even though the government funded the buildings. And it's an incredibly visionary project. This is in our ordinance that's really about encouraging creative development, supporting new artists, supporting new creative projects, and nurturing local talents, and also linking Hong Kong with the larger international industries as well. So it's really, these are just a few of the key missions in the articles of incorporation for the authority. And so we're building all of these buildings. It's not just a construction project. It really is a visionary development to make Hong Kong an arts and cultural hub in the region and for the world, and to help support the local artists and be that connection with the rest of the world. So speaking of connection, here are just a few of the very specific ways, planes, trains, and automobiles, that we connect with the rest of the world. Now, those of you who are familiar with Hong Kong, very often people, if they live on the island side, say they never go to Kowloon. It feels so far away. It's a bit like Brooklyn for those of you who live in New York City. But actually, West Kowloon is right in the center of the city. It's on Victoria Harbor, on one of the most beautiful waterside views, frankly, on the planet. It has the most romantic sunset. We are right across the street from the train that takes you the high-speed rail to the airport on the western side of the district, and on the eastern side, it's right across the street from the express rail link into mainland China. So in terms of trains and also linkages to the airports, that's direct. We have multiple MTR stations right near us. We have bus routes that go straight through the district. And when it's completely finished, the entire district is actually pedestrianized. So all of the traffic will be underneath in a basement, which allows it to be really quite a phenomenal space, again, for lifestyle and to encourage people to just come and spend their days here. And we're actually also in the next year or so going to have ferry terminals going directly from the island side to the Kowloon side, which will again create another vehicle to just make it that much easier to come to us. So let me introduce the 3 main performing arts centers, 2 of which are already open. One is coming online soon. Starting with the Shichu Center, Heikokdongsan. So the Shichu Center is our Center for Chinese Opera. Now there are more than 300 different types of Chinese opera. Sichuan opera, Peking opera, Cantonese opera, Kunshu, and on and on and on. So this is really a center for both cultural heritage as well as bringing this art form into the 21st century. And it not only presents the best of the classics, it also, we produce and create and support innovative new productions as well. So within this iconic building, the architect is Bing Tom from Reverie Architects. He's a Hong Kong born, but actually Reverie Architects is based in Canada. Here's the lobby. Now, one thing that's unique about this architecture is this is the atrium and it's open on 4 sides, which our security team hates because we can't shut it down. But it actually means that it creates this openness, this sense of a community square where people can gather. And so this image you can see, we do weekend free music performances for the community so that people can come in and enjoy and just have an encounter during their daily lives with performance. The other thing that's unique about this venue is the Grand Theater is actually on the top floor of the building. Now, very often theaters are on the ground level, ground floor, you walk right into the lobby. But with this, I like to say we elevated the art form, but actually there was a very practical reason that we had to lift the entire theater into the air, and that's for acoustic isolation, because there's the high-speed rail to China, the MTR, all of these train routes run straight under the West Kowloon plot of land. So architecturally, it's a real challenge to create the acoustic isolation, but there's some real innovation in the technology and engineering that allowed us to do that. So here's the Grand Theater, 1,072 seats. It is custom built, the acoustics as well as the stage for Chinese opera. However, we do other performances there as well. So we will have dance, musical theater, Western opera, but it is custom built for Chinese opera. And in the first 6 months that it was open, almost every show was completely sold out. So it really tells you the demand here and the passion for this art form and the interest to have a brand new state-of-the-art theater that really modernizes the theater technology capabilities for this art form, which is a local, Cantonese opera is the local Hong Kong regional genre of Chinese opera. And there are theaters here that present it, but a lot of those theaters are quite old. So it's really a luxury to have this state-of-the-art theater equipment. And I don't know if any of our viewers are from that industry, but in terms of technology, we've also outfitted all of the district to have, to start to be able to be 5G capabilities with the rest of the city, to be able to broadcast and record things, and certainly with COVID, to be able to have the live broadcast that's becoming more and more of a priority. We have a unique tea house theater. So this is an intimate 200 or less seat theater where, in addition to the performance, you get tea and dim sum during the show. So it's a bit of a nod back to the very traditional tea house theaters of yore to reintroduce that. It's also a 90-minute show of different excerpts. So I like to say it's, a nice first date with Chinese opera. You can have just a brief introduction to understand something about this art form. And the narrator introduces each excerpt and explains what to look for, what are you seeing, how to really understand something that for many people feels quite esoteric or removed. There are English surtitles for every production that we present in our theaters. And this production, this tea house theater reopened in the middle of COVID. We're not post-COVID yet, but now that Hong Kong is becoming safer to reopen and following, of course, all of the regulations at 50% capacity, and we've unfortunately paused our tea and dim sum for now so that people can keep their masks on during the show. But at least we're performing again. The other unique thing about this is the resident Tea House Theater Rising Stars troupe are all in their 20s and 30s. So we're bringing up not only new audiences, introducing them to this art form, but new artists as well. And this is just one proof of concept in the first year since it opened. We commissioned our own new Cantonese opera production of Farewell, My Concubine, which is actually a Peking opera classic. And this is a 4-star review in the Financial Times from last fall. We're rerunning this production at the Tea House Theater this October as well. So please do watch our website to see opportunities to come see it again. This production has toured all over mainland China, Singapore, Taiwan, and already to critical acclaim and won a number of awards in mainland China as well. So don't miss it this fall. Now, moving from the far eastern side of our district to the western side is the Art Park. And again, in a city like Hong Kong that's so congested, having this big open green space is really an incredible luxury right on the water. We do big outdoor music and art festivals out in the art park as well. And lately we've set up some food trucks and drink trucks and things like that, so people who've come just to enjoy and relax can grab a beer, have snacks. They don't have to go into the restaurants. And starting this weekend, in a couple weekends, we're going to be doing pop-up performances, free space open house, as we start to, re-encourage people to feel comfortable coming back into our theaters. These are two different views of two different sections of the art park. Last year in November, we had our inaugural Jazz Fest. We had more than 13,000 people over 2 days to see jazz from the US, the UK, the who's who of jazz here in Hong Kong. And we will be repeating the Jazz Festival this November 7th and 8th as well, focusing, of course, on local talents because international travel is restricted, but there's tons of jazz going on in Hong Kong. So if you're able to come this November, what did I just say, 7th and 8th? 7th. Thanks. Don't miss it, because you'll be able to see some really incredible performances, as well as for kids and jazz and dance connections as well. Now, in the heart of the art park, right in the middle, is our new black box theater, Free Space. This is the largest black box theater in Hong Kong. This is an image of the box, the main black box theater. It's 10 meters high, again, which is one of the highest, and it allows us to do all kinds of flexible performances. That's a weight-bearing grid, so we can do installation art, we can have acrobatics, circus, people flying from the rooftops. And those seats that you're looking at, it's about 425 seats capacity, they retract into the wall, which allows us to have up to 900 standing, if we wanted to do standing capacity as well. And it can be completely reconfigured. So we've done theater in the round, where we've built a stage and the audience is in the middle on swivel chairs, so they turn depending on where they're looking. When COVID started back at the end of January, West Kowloon was actually the first arts organization in Hong Kong to go online in response to COVID. So we closed all the venues, I think it was around January 29th, and by February 7th, we were live streaming our performances, our music performances, in the Live House. It's a cafe bar setting where we do jazz every Friday, indie musicians every Saturday, and classical music every Sunday. So we've paused those for a while, but those will be coming back literally online soon, so that people outside of Hong Kong, such as many of you watching today, will be able to have access to some of the best of Hong Kong's talents through the internet. And then quickly, the next building to come online, to open in a few years' time, is Lyric Theatre Complex. This is a center focused on dance, drama, and musical theater. And there are 3 venues. The largest is 1,450 seats. So this will do large ballets, orchestras, as well as musical theater. The medium theater, a bit better for drama or maybe more contemporary dance. And then the studio theater at 250 seats. And then finally, before I wrap up, 2 museums. M+, which is one of the largest art museums in Asia, opens next year. It's the Center for Contemporary Visual Culture. And then for heritage, again, West Kowloon has something for everyone, whether it's most contemporary or most classical. This is, of course, in partnership with the Beijing Palace Museum as well. And then finally, I want to touch on commerce, because as I did say, West Kowloon Cultural District, in addition to the arts and culture, is also a place for retail, dining, entertainment. This is going to be a partnership for the artists' residence and hostel. And then here, the ACE is going to be a convention center. So up to 10,000 for convention center seats for exhibitions, but then also a focus on more exhibition, retail, dining, entertainment, hotel, and office space. So there's incredible opportunities. We're really just beginning with this incredibly ambitious project, and we look forward to working more closely with all of you.
Thank you, Alison. Opportunities are flooding at West Kowloon Cultural District, I'll say. Perhaps we can get into more details during the panel discussion.
Great.
Sam, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Bompus, founder of Bomps & Par, which is a creative practice. We're based here in London. I'm actually in my studio at the moment. And I'll talk about this. It's a 6-meter high whiskey organ that sat behind me in a second. But we've, so I'll get on to that in a second, but really to start with, you know, we've set up Bomps & Par in Hong Kong in the last month. And even with everything that's going on with COVID, It's been a very, very wonderful experience. It's been very straightforward, and that has a lot to do with the people around the table here. So yeah, thank you very much to Doris and Chloe for your advice, your assistance, and your guidance. And if you're on this call, I would wholeheartedly recommend getting in touch if you've got questions, if you've got ambitions into Hong Kong and Asia. So I'm coming at this from a creative practice that's striving out in order to make our mark in Asia, and doing that through Hong Kong. And I'm going to be talking over the next 10 minutes or so about our sort of journey towards Hong Kong, towards Asia, and actually finishing off with something of an experiment that has a small element of danger. Normally it'd be for a live audience, but in this case, it's only for me because I'm the only person in the room, but it does elucidate a point about our approach to food and drink. But before that, just giving you a sense of what we do at Bomson Park, and do that really quickly. Work a lot with cultural institutions, so people like the V&A, people like the Barbican, that's international. We've had retrospective at the Sao Paulo Museum of Modern Art. Work a lot with governments, and a lot of that is presenting different countries to the world in different shapes and forms, largely through food and drink, you'll see. And we work a lot with a lot of the world's biggest brands, so people like Coca-Cola, LVMH, and quite often that's telling stories about their brilliant products that quite often some of the people working with those brands have forgotten about. And the thing that I really like is when you put all of those things together to create something that people haven't ever seen before, and gives them amazing stories about their life. So it's things like this, doing the New Year's Eve fireworks show for London and setting it all to flavours. So you see fireworks explode in the night sky. You had a live audience of 250,000 people. And as red fireworks exploded, you tasted strawberries. You then went on to things like peach snow, edible banana confetti, all of it hypoallergenic, halal, kosher, and projects like this take about a year's worth of research, and then culminate in a single evening. Doing things off our own backs, we do a lot of self-initiated projects that we think are important. So in this case, if you're a meter away from someone, you wouldn't be able to see them because you'll be stepping inside a gin and tonic cloud, and that intoxicates through the lungs and eyeballs, but also enhances the flavors you can find in the drink as well. So it really brings out botanicals in the gin. And a project like that, I think we spent, our marketing budget for it was £6,000, and we achieved a reach of 3.7 billion. So by anyone's reckoning, it's quite good return on investment, and 70,000 people came through it. But we also do a lot of things which are large-scale attractions. So this is the Guinness Storehouse, the Guinness Tasting Room, has 1.7 million people going through it every single year. 40% of those people haven't ever tasted Guinness before. So we orchestrated a series of chambers in which you'd have the ultimate Guinness tasting. And here it is. It's been running now for 6 years. If you're in Ireland, it's the most popular place to visit in all of Ireland. It's sort of this hyper-real simulacrum of everything that you dream Guinness could be. I'd wholeheartedly recommend going. And we also do things just for the sake of it. So like cooking with love, and there's my business partner, Harry Parr, cooking a steak very, very quickly with over 1.1 billion-year-old rock that's been melted down. But in terms of that journey to get there, oh, and the last show that we did was considered by one punter to be so immersive they forgot about Brexit, which I think the gauntlet is down. Our next live is going to be at the Design Museum. I've never had so much fun going to measure up a space, and that's going live at the end of July. Our challenge that I'm setting to myself with that is, can we make it so immersive that people forgot about COVID? We'll see at the end of next month. But in terms of our creative arc, how do we end up coming to Hong Kong? And really the answer was Wobbly Jelly. And this is because we started 13 years ago with myself and my business partner. a passion for jelly, and we found that we couldn't afford the jelly molds that we really wanted to use because they're antiques, they're very, very beautiful. And my business partner, Harry, was training to be an architect at the time, is now a qualified architect. And he discovered that he could use the same programs that he was using to design buildings to design jelly molds. In fact, the program we tend to use is Rhino, which was, I think, invented to design trainers. So it's had a pretty interesting creative arc itself. So you design a jelly mold like that on the computer, and it ends up looking like this. Because we had, we thought we were so enthused by this and what could happen. I think we spoke to a lot of the architects that Alison was showcasing some of the work of, and Doris was showcasing some of the work of in their presentations. And we said, look, we're designing jellies. Could you design buildings as jellies, and we'll make them as an architectural design competition for the London Festival of Architecture. And over 1,000 architects designed jellies. We got commissions in from Lord Foster, and that's the Millennium Bridge, the Wobbly Bridge in London, and Roger Sturt Carver and Partners, that's Barracas Airport in Madrid, if you know it. And they were so fabulous that we decided to have an event. 2,000 people came along, and we recorded the jelly wobbling for the first time, which is with an in-ear scientist. It became the most watched video on New Scientist for a long time. Heston Blumenthal came along to host it, but it was upstaged by Jelly Wrestling. But it was kind of fantastic, just through exploring one thing, jelly. We had our sort of first career doing jellies for weddings, jellies for, that's a whole map of America in jelly, jellies for fashion shows, jellies as art. This is at San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And we were asked to make an artist statement, but we said really the jellies needed to speak for themselves. But it was really the jellies that first brought us into Asia. And I think one of the reasons is, I'm a jelly obsessive and obsessed with Asian agar-agar jellies. Some of the gelatinas, the Gottespeise, gelatinas in Mexico, Gottespeise or Wackel pudding in Germany. But I think that gelatin jellies is one of the few dishes that Brits did better than the French historically. So it helped us become invited to some of DIT's programs presenting British culture internationally. So you can see us there for the Greats campaign. I guess the challenge is that even with all that joy, jelly's still quite niche. So it wasn't until we started working with alcohol, in particular, that we really that our careers really took off in Asia. And I've called whiskey really the golden connection between the UK, Scotland specifically, and Asia, and that's really been the stimulus to take us over into Hong Kong. And you can see it's things like, so I think Scotch is worth 5 billion to the British economy, and it's 7% of Scotland's food and drink exports, and a lot of it is enjoyed across Asia. And so one of the challenges with it is sometimes it's quite mysterious what's going on in the glass. So how do you unpick it? And that's what we spend a lot of our time doing, is trying to give people different ways to understand what's going on in their glass. And I'm sat beneath this thing that's on the screen. It's a 6-meter high whiskey organ that we toured around all the different markets in Asia. It came to Hong Kong as well. And that's for Johnny Walker. And as it plays, it uses the senses to choreograph what you discover in a glass. So it changes your palate by as much as about 20%. We've done things like map the entirety of Scotland, because I'm obsessed with rocks and terroir and the impact that they have on the flavors that you can find in a bottle of whiskey. So for Singleton, we mapped Scotland. This is rather wonderful. This grand table, and when he started out, didn't have any whiskey on it, but there was a hidden wheel that the guests would play, and the bottles of whiskey would come out of a mountain and come out of a lake, not unlike Tracy Island with the Thunderbirds model, the grand reveal. We also always looking for ways to innovate and tell stories about whiskies. So whiskies often have age statements. I find when orchestrating tastings for people about whiskey, they have one, they have the old one, they have a very impossibly expensive one they'll probably never taste in their life. It might have been in the bottle for many decades, and they'll have it. But how do they really understand the impact of the aging process? And our answer to unpick that was to pair whiskies with people who were born in the same year the whiskey was put in cask. Mind you, we did start, this was Valentine's Day, and for Valentine's Day, you and a partner or friends would be invited to an event at the Penthouse where we had different volunteers we asked for people to be 21 and upwards. The top person was, we actually had someone who was 62 who wanted to have whiskey lapped off their body for Valentine's Day. We could find a whiskey that was 62 years old. It was over £150,000, and as we were hosting this event, we instead said, well, look, we can't use you as a model, but do come along and tell your story anyway. But we did have a 54-year-old whiskey there, and people would tell their story, and then we'd have some of the top barmen would then talk about the whiskey, and then people would do a body shot off them. So yeah, it was, and there are lots of different ways of telling stories. And most recently, just in September this year, we've been out in Tokyo looking at spirited forecasts and weather forecasts and this is at the British Embassy, making clouds of gin, plasma hit whiskey, and a twisting tornado, and also sparkling English wine bubbles as well. So winding up, you know, I was thinking that for our practice, what we've always discovered is finding the joy of a single ingredient, particularly one that resonates with many, many people, can take you on these fantastic journeys. Our next ingredient that we're really discovering, we found it in the UK, the British Museum of Food. Our next exhibition is going to be about caffeine, and we'll be hoping to tour that right the way across Asia. I hear that in China, coffee drinking is increasing by about 10% each year. So there's incredible opportunities for storytelling around that. That's something we're very excited to do. But to wind up, I was just going to elucidate the joy of a single ingredient with the humble pickle, humble gherkin. And we found out that gherkins conduct electricity very poorly, mind you, but they do electricity. And you can turn them into a slightly rubbish light bulb if you run electricity through them. And a small gherkin draws about 300 watts of power, and one this size draws about 500 watts of power. And what it does is it excites the salt in them, the sodium in the salt. And as that sodium falls back to the ground state of the energy level, it emits a wavelength of light called sodium D line. And as soon as we found that out, we commissioned an engineer, an electrical engineer, to work with us to build a gherkin chandelier, which is incredibly dangerous. It draws about the same amount of power as 2 whole city blocks. It will immediately electrocute you and kill you if you get near it. I've not set up one that big today, but I have set up, just as I was talking, a miniature gherkin chandelier. I'm going to dim the lights and turn it on. We'll get some
larger screen.
Can we enlarge the screen?
Yeah, let me stop sharing.
Yeah, that should be big.
That's a good idea. There we go. So there you got the gherkins are ready to go, and I'll do a quick countdown. You see the joy of a single ingredient, the gherkins. So 3, 2, 1. Oh. So I think on that we fused everything. I will circulate.
Sure.
Not very effective as light bulbs at all, but there is a certain joy in it, and the unpredictability is some of the pleasure as well.
Love it.
Thank you. Amazing.
Great. Well, thank you very much indeed. So I've never had to follow on from someone with a electrocuted gherkin experiment. So
That sounds like a band name.
good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, wherever you are. I know there are people listening in New York and things like that. So good day to wherever you are. I'm Andrew Davis. I head Invest Hong Kong here in the UK, and I've been involved with Hong Kong now for 24 years, and it always amazes me what Hong Kong turns up, exploding gherkins. And now we have an opportunity to speak to our panelists and get perhaps a bit more insight into what's going on in Hong Kong in the creative industries. So I'm going to throw this open to various panelists. So we'll start with Alison. I love the presentation on West Kowloon. Having been there involved with Hong Kong since 1996, it's interesting to see the changes that have happened in that period. You talked about the commercial side, and I know it's not your area, but what are you looking for in retail and F&B for West Kowloon?
There's a huge range. First, I'll talk about the side that is not directly related to me, and that's the purely commercial development. That includes restaurants, office towers. I mentioned the ACE, which is the Commerce and Exhibition Center, which also will have a hotel partnership. We're building also an artist hostel that'll be more of a boutique residential experience for both guests as well as for the artists that will be performing at our different venues. So everything from just your average retail. Already we have a number of restaurants and cafes open, and not only building the buildings to then operate in them, but also within the M+ Tower, within our new West Kowloon office tower, there are certain floors and designated areas for these commercial operations. Now they could also be more culturally directed, so auction houses or other more cultural institutions that are still commercially focused. They're not nonprofits, but they're looking for real estate to come in and operate on our venue. We're also looking for more open office working space, a more incubation hub for the creative industries to be able to come in and have your headquarters. Sam, maybe your office can be at West Kowloon in one of our office buildings. So shared working space. Now, the other element of things that has much more crossover with what I do is earlier, I think, Doris, you were mentioning the gaming industries, and there's beginning to be quite a bit of crossover with gaming, immersive, experiential world and the performing arts. And it's still early days, but mainland China, Hong Kong are certainly, and the rest of the world now with COVID, are looking at these more socially distanced. How can gaming start to create new creative opportunities for performance and for more creative experiences for audiences? So we're actually looking to try and explore and expand our creative practice to cross over into gaming. And certainly it doesn't hurt that when you're looking for funding for the arts, there's a tremendous amount of capital in the gaming industries that I think might help the more nonprofit arts industries. We do have an arts relief scheme that we just launched to support local Hong Kong artists, and I'm really pleased to say one of those grants is going to go to a gaming project that's going to look at how performing arts and gaming can cross over in this more socially distanced realm. So those are just a few of the things. I haven't even touched on merchandising and online e-commerce that we're developing as well. Certainly looking at over in mainland with Taobao, Tmall, all of the online e-commerce in mainland China, but even just generally with our performing arts. The two museums, museum gift shops are of course incredibly adept at doing that. Performing arts less so. So this is an opportunity for West Kowloon to really develop the e-commerce and the merchandising aspect of performing arts.
Fascinating.
So
I mean, it is really interesting to watch the development and the sort of maturity of West Kowloon as it goes forward. Chloe, I've got a...
Sorry to interrupt. I didn't, to cut you off, I just wanted to add, I didn't embed a whole bunch of links onto my presentation, but opportunities, all of these EOI, RFQ, they're all on the West Kowloon website. So if you just go to westkowloon.hk, the ongoing opportunities for the more commercial opportunities are up there.
Yeah, and of course, Doris, your colleagues on the tourism and hospitality team can help in guiding people to sites and opportunities within West Kowloon as well.
Yeah, sure.
Also consumer products, I shouldn't forget that. You're talking of merchandise.
In fact, we are sharing a lot of the EOI and these kinds of tender opportunities through our network. So we are in close collaboration with West Kowloon because we work very closely together to let our overseas clients know what the opportunities are lying ahead.
Yeah. And Chloe, I suppose that leads me on to say, what's the commonest question that you get asked by UK businesses coming to Hong Kong?
I'm just going to start with a generic one on the language. Just to clarify, in Hong Kong, the spoken language is Cantonese and the written language is traditional Chinese. But a lot of companies, they are really worried when they are trying to start a conversation with potential clients in Hong Kong. They would ask questions like, oh, do I need to translate everything? Do I need to translate my portfolio into Chinese just to make sure I have a good communication with the potential clients? I'd say rest assured, English is very commonly used in businesses, and don't stress over the language, because English is also an official language here in Hong Kong. I'm sure everyone would agree with me. So just no need to stress on languages. Another one I would touch on would be the IP. Quite a lot of companies will be worried that their IPs could be copied by Chinese companies. I'll say under the common law system, IP is well protected. And I'm just looking at Doris here because I'm sure she will agree on this as well.
Yes, I think we have also a very stringent IP protection system here in Hong Kong in place.
I think it's a very good point you raised, Chloe, about the language, because that is something we emphasize in the overseas offices and in Hong Kong, that getting that right is very important, and don't let it worry you. Sam, I love that presentation. I particularly like the whiskey organ, but why Hong Kong over other cities in Asia? And is this the first of many offices?
Well, I think yes. It's actually speaking last night because obviously, normally I travel a terrific amount for what we do, and haven't been recently. And was playing the game of like, where would you go if you go anywhere on the planet? And my answer was 100% Hong Kong, and that's just for the lifestyle. To start with, so it's a place where I enjoy spending time, but then of course there are very significant business advantages as well. So Hong Kong's a great place as a significant regional hub. Some other cities in Asia work as a good local hub, but Hong Kong's a great bouncing off place as an entrepot to wider China, but also other cities in Asia. Then I think one of the things that as a Westerner and as someone who speaks one language, it is a place that is relatively frictionless. It's a delight to work there, and finally the talent as well. So we're being spearheaded in Hong Kong by Josh, who is one of the co-founders of Twins Kitchen. I believe he's on this call as well. And it's a brilliant exemplar of, so Josh is not only a designer and an architect, but also a chef as well. So brings together these terrific disciplines, and that's where you get something really new and fresh. And so makes it possible to do the sorts of projects that we're ambitious to realize, that bring together these different knowledges.
Yeah, that leads me very nicely to segue into Doris. You have helped many creative companies over the last 10 years. How do you see the need, for creative talent, and is Hong Kong able to satisfy that demand?
Well, I think this is a very good questions for creative industries because talent is very important. And I must say in many sectors in the creative industries, Hong Kong has abundant supply, very good supply of talents. For example, in design, in art, architecture, and content creation, advertising. We have very good universities as well for design schools like PolyU, Creative Media in the City U, and also Hong Kong University in producing a lot of business professionals. Because I also want to mention about it's not just the artistic side and the creative side. Many international business, for example, use Hong Kong as a business hub, and therefore sales and marketing is really important, and business development. And let me just stress a little bit about having a very good business development person in Hong Kong to lead the Hong Kong office when you first start in Hong Kong is super important. And we have very good supply of these kinds of professionals in Hong Kong. And when we talk about talents, not just to forget, Hong Kong is East meets West culture. And therefore, we have local talents that understand the Eastern culture and the Western culture. But also, we have a very good supply of multinational talents here as well, who have been working in Hong Kong for quite some time. And they are free to move on to other more interesting places to work. And therefore, it gives also a very good supply of multinational talents to our international clients.
Well, that actually leads me into a question that's come in from the audience, and saying that they'd really like to hear from Sam. How did you navigate the challenge of building long-term relationships with Hong Kong contacts whilst in the UK? So how did you manage that? You know, we've had sort of 6 months of this, 5 months, whatever now. How did you manage that?
Well, I think in a strange way, sort of COVID's been a level playing field, because I've got exactly the same amount of contacts now with my contacts in Hong Kong that I do with my business contacts in London and round the corner. Through a screen, and we're doing the best we can.
That is very true.
But you know, I think one of the things that working in Hong Kong, personal relationships are really, really important. You know, I would wholeheartedly recommend visiting in person when it's possible. As soon as quarantine controls open up, that's what I'll be doing. But actually, just your practice of being on this call, you know, speaking to Doris, speaking to Chloe, they've been really, really helpful in you know, creating spaces, creating recommendations. In order to do that and make those connections. So they're really good people to ask to start with in terms of building up that network. And then it's doing nothing different than we do normally, which is do interesting work, tell a lot of people about it, invite a lot of people down, ask them what their next problem is that they're working on, and come up with a constructive way to help them with whatever it is.
Excellent. And yeah, I think that's it is interesting. You say the world we find ourselves in now actually means that you're on a very playing field, yeah, right across the world.
And I would say my next seminar, so one of the lovely things about Hong Kong is, for someone in the UK, there's quite a decent crossover in terms of your business hours and your office hours. So this is a really civilized time to be speaking. My next webinar is in Australia, and it's 1 a.m. in the morning. I've got no idea what the caliber of responses are going to be to the questions there, but yeah, it's you know, it feels comfortable.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Sam. I know we're running short of time, but Alison, I've got a quick question for you. Hong Kong is short of medium-sized music venues that cater for a wider range of music taste. Will West Kowloon address this in any way? As Doris knows, I'm speaking from my own interest in particularly things like indie music, where you either have those convention center things which are only a quarter full, or you're packed into a very tiny space.
Well, we already are addressing that. Free Space, which I mentioned, is the new Contemporary Performance Center. It's 450 seated, 900 standing, and anywhere in between that. So we've already been doing our Jazz Fest. We've had a long-term, even before the buildings were open, doing outdoor music festivals in stages that cater anywhere from small little pockets of the lawn to up to 10,000 people on the Great Lawn. And our partnerships with many indie bands here in Hong Kong have been featured there already, even before the building opened. In addition to free space, right in the lobby, there's a live house, a cafe bar for about 100 seats around tables. I like to say it's a bit like Joe's Pub and the Public Theater. So it's a private bar restaurant, but there's live music every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we're expanding that as things start to reopen.
Oh, that's very good. I just would hope that something similar opens on the island at some stage as well. So
just come to West Kowloon.
You can take a ferry next year, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's very interesting that the ferry will operate. Will that operate from Central and from Wan Chai?
It will be new. It will be more like water taxis, and it will go to different parts on the lot. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Chloe, I mean, you know, we've seen a huge impact on the creative and arts and cultural sector in the UK as a result of COVID-19. Do you see us working together to Hong Kong and UK working together to give an outlet for UK companies who are at the moment quite restricted?
Well, definitely. I'll say first thing first, DIT also hosts an export opportunity platform where we at Post would go to talk to different stakeholders, discover what opportunities are out here, and then publish them on our Exporting is Great website. So UK companies, if you have not signed up, please do so now. Then you get alerts from all over the world on what opportunities lie ahead for you. And taking the impact of COVID, I'm sure this is a recurring theme among all the speakers. Things are going to digitalize. I think the creative sectors will have to be more innovative in tackling this. For example, in DIT, China and Hong Kong network, we've been exploring different digital platforms and tools to see how we can better facilitate business conversations. And I mean, virtual events are happening, like our webinar, be it virtual festival, virtual conferences, studio tours, open house, they're all going online. So this would be what the sector should start looking into, I'll say. On the plus side, distance matters less. As we're entering a globalized world, it opens up even more opportunities for UK companies to go overseas.
Excellent. Yes, very true. And you know, as I speak, Doris and I worked together for almost 10 years on this now. It is interesting how the UK particularly has been so successful with creative businesses coming to Hong Kong. I've got one question from the audience here, which I think is best for Doris, which is, how open are mainland clients to working with Hong Kong design businesses who don't have a mainland office?
I think especially for, like, say, design, because mainland is the largest export market for Hong Kong design services. And many of our international clients, when they first set up in Hong Kong, because of our easy environment and low tax and other advantage, they have easy access to the mainland market, especially nowadays, GBA areas as well. And with the digital tools, as well as our excellent connectivity in future, when COVID-19 comes down, people can just travel to mainland within 2 hours flight time if they want to go farther, or actually 50 minutes away from Hong Kong to some parts of Shenzhen. So actually, distance is not a problem anymore. And I must say, sometimes when I speak to overseas clients and they say, for mainland, of course, if you have a more longer term projects with them, they might prefer you to have another presence here in the mainland so that they can communicate easier, or they can have other access to the talents over there. But most of the time, especially in the first few years, it's important for them to be based in Hong Kong to establish those networks, because many of those networks they can find in Hong Kong. And the mainland companies are very open to working with clients in Hong Kong, especially in the creative side, because we still have a lot of creative talents here that they treasure. Is the kind of international edge that they treasure in working with us as well.
Good. I mean, it is, particularly when companies are looking, that they should speak to people like yourself and Chloe, as well as companies that are already there, to get a feel for the pitfalls and the opportunities that exist doing this cross-border trade. I think we're running out of time because it's up to about 10 past. So I'll finish with one final question, which to all of you, which is, what makes Hong Kong different from other cities in Asia for the creative sector?
I think there's a tremendous volume. There's both quantity and quality. Before I moved here, I was living in Beijing for 16 years, and a lot of people warned me that Hong Kong had a reputation as a cultural desert. And it's absolutely the opposite. In the first year I was here, I probably spent one night a week at home, not at an event, a performance, an exhibition, an opening, some kind of cultural happening. So there's a huge amount, and it's only growing. With West Kowloon, the government's also opening East Kowloon, there's Daiguan, there's Asia Society Hong Kong, the Academy of Performing Arts, and all of the galleries and museums as well. So I think the sheer volume and critical mass is incredibly exciting in such a tiny little city.
I'm just going to add on to what Alison mentioned. So apart from the government kind of facilitated venues, the property developers in Hong Kong are really open to including more arts and cultural installations in Hong Kong. So for example, the London Lights Festival was in Lee Tong Avenue. So we embrace a lot of different arts and installations at our commercial sites. So a lot of opportunities are here in Hong Kong. So come.
Sam, any?
Well, I always look to one of my great heroes is Gordon Selfridge, who would also often say things like, "There's nothing as fun as work," which I think is a spirit that's very much embodied by Hong Kong. Their first ever advert talks about the romance of commerce, and one of the things that I really love about Hong Kong is the relationship between sort of commerce and creativity, both put together, and the opportunities that really provides.
Excellent. I mean, we're getting a few more questions in, but I don't think we're going to have time to deal with this. However, I would say to the audience that any of the questions that have come in and that haven't been answered, Doris and her team will respond, or my team will respond here in the UK, depending on where they're from. So thank you very much indeed, everyone, for taking part. Doris, would you like to say a few closing words?
Well, I just want to thank everyone, including DIT, Alison and Sam from the UK, in taking part in this webinar, and also our overseas and local audience. And thank you very much for joining. This is just the beginning, I think. We find excitement in the COVID situation, where we can reach the world with other tools, and we are not isolated and not alone in this struggle. I think we are all together in unison. I think we can create a much better future. So hopefully, if you have questions, please either contact me or Chloe or Andrew in the UK.
Lovely. Thanks very much indeed, everyone. And yeah, we're happy to help, and it's a free and confidential service.
Yes, we forgot to mention about the free service. It's free.
So Sam, I look forward to coming and seeing your whiskey organ before too long.
Yes, and the jelly.
And the jelly.
Radical palates all round.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Okay, bye.
A pleasure.